Awesome, Alejandro. Over to you for your final Prod MBA case study. Very curious to see what you've done with this prototype as well.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Henry. So let's start. So welcome to the presentation of the case study of MedScribe. We will actually give it a start so we can tell you a little bit more about what we did here and what MedScribe is. So actually during the product process that we have through Prod MBA, we have 4 different objectives. The first objective was to actually validate the problem that we were coming with, and we are going to explain a little bit later on. Second, validate the offer that this problem provided. And third, do the strategic planning. And fourth, actually build a prototype that allow us to validate all the other objectives that we accomplished through the program. So let's start by talking about what MedScribe tackled, how it was created, and more importantly, what problem actually are we solving? So the problems that we decided to pursue was doctors in hospitals spending too much time writing medical reports. How did we come up with this problem? Actually happened to be that I have a lot of friends and people that I know in the medical circle that I struggle with the traditional capacities of the systems. And we have spontaneously talked about this. So we decided to explore this idea further, and not only based on their assumption, but actually start to discovering if that actually was a generic problem. So as we mentioned before, the objective number 1 was actually validate if in fact this is a real acute problem. So what is the key results that we wanted to actually have in this objective number 1? So the first one is identify actually how acute this problem is. And if there are other problems that actually are unknown to us without being biased on the documentation per se, through 5 discovery calls. And second, validate the willingness to actually participate in the discovery calls through different groups, especially the medicine student in rotation works. And as I mentioned before, through my personal network, composed of different doctors in a variety of hospitals. So after doing what I mentioned before, actually, we completed easily the 5 out of 5 discovery calls conducted. We also discovered that was very appreciated to be contacted through this problem. We reached a 70% given that those that actually we contacted book a call through the WhatsApp group that we reach out or to personal outreach. And many more actually were willing to talk to us, and we did later on after we did the initial discovery through the program. So it was a really great start here, actually give us the possibility to see that people at least is very willing to talk about the problem. And we have like many different findings that actually amaze us after the discovery calls. So out of all the calls and all the notes that we took through this phase, these 3 are very powerful things that we found. So the first one is that in average, a doctor in hospital spent between 1 and 2 hours writing reports manually each day, at least in Switzerland. And also per every 15 minutes of consults for the ones that are in what we call like the praxis here, that are like just the general doctor that you go when you have an initial contact or an initial problem and you require health assistance. Spent at least third of the time, 15 minutes, actually taking notes to write later the report that will be given to you, or even more depending the situation. And also we discovered that different hospitals and different praxis demand different standards and styles on writing medical reports. So actually doctors need to relearn these as they go through onboarding in a new working environment. So after this, after having like all this information, we decided to validate the offer that we decided to focus on with our target niche. This offer that we put together was to help doctor in hospital to achieve documentation 3 days with AI-powered generated reports. Thanks to my background in software engineering and working with greenfield technologies, we are aware that actually it's possible to summarize and actually concatenate and put together in a very logical, grammatically correct manner reports based on the right input. So here, we wanted to talk a little bit about the key results that we managed trying to validate the following offer that I already described. The first was a surprising more than 25% outreach to sync up in the conversion with a minimal UI interface that we created for people just to have an interaction point. So then again, we reach through this WhatsApp group for medical students in rotations. Out of 200 students, we got around 65 different emails recorded with interest in testing the beta of this prototype. And then it is important that we also take into account what competitors we have in the landscape, how are we going to differentiate ourselves, and actually what will be a little bit our product vision and actually the product story that we want to tell to the users. So given that the time is short, I just wanted to share very quickly a little bit how what I mentioned before looked like. So actually we study the competitors that are in hospitals in Switzerland in this moment and even in Europe. And we determined that even though they have very different capabilities, none of them actually are providing automated reports so far. Through the discovery also was important to mention there is another product that gave us validation in the AI environment, but it is not targeted towards hospitals or automation of medical reports, but taking medical notes when you have remote consults for patients. And here to the left, you can see the minimal viable offer GUI that actually we put together for the people to interact with. And as we mentioned, the MBA statements that we wanted to share with them was that we want to help them to actually achieve documentation-free days at work. Then after putting all these things together, getting the feedback through a small survey that we did at the end together with the MBO, we decided to validate a product vision. And actually, this is important to communicate what we want to aim in the future, not necessarily only with AI, but with any other emerging technology that arrives. So in this case, we came up with the most time-saving automated medical report service for doctors in hospitals, and not only in Switzerland, but for any kind of hospital and any kind of doctor. And then after talking about objective number 2, let's focus a little bit of what I mentioned before regarding the strategic planning, the alignment to ensure actually that the long-term success of the product. So here we are going to talk about basically a strategic roadmap and the initial prototype that we came up with, the lean canvas that we created in order to actually pinpoint the exact niches that we wanted to target, the early adopters, and all the metrics that we want to actually keep in mind when we are going through the whole development of the process. And last but not least, a small overview of how the team topology will look like at the end or in 1 or 2 years of after starting the development of the product. So first, let's take a look at the strategic roadmap. Here, actually, of course, we are focusing first on the core of the problem, like is increase the speed and the agility that doctors currently have to write these reports, automating them. So have self-generated report for not in standard procedures, and automatic standard procedure reports. The difference here is like ones need like a more verification when there are not the standard procedures, they are completely automatic. And of course, this faster reporting needs to be measured to be sure that actually we are moving towards goal. So here we have, for example, 3 different key metrics that we can actually follow in order to do that. So time in hours saved by improved the dictation or the self-generation of the reports, the percent of the standard reports being automatically generated, and also the time spent editing the self-generated reports. All of that will provide us like a really good view how accurate and how performant are our reports, sorry. After that, actually we move into other more support-wise capabilities that are around these reports that actually we discovered through the discovery, and was like there is problems finding the right place where to place the files, and then if the report is already auto-generated, of course, the AI and actually software system can place that automatically in the right place. And last but not least, actually constructing or building like a new set of tools for the resident doctors to be able to check the intern doctor reports in a more efficient manner, qualifying what can potentially be an incorrect report, for example, or ordering by priority what should be evaluated first, to give you an example. And that at the end is the panorama that we will expect for the product to follow in the first 1 to 3 years. As we were saying before, after having like a strategic approach, we decided to actually focus on what to build first in order to validate the value for the project. In this case, it's important to notice that AI, even though that has been here for a while, is not always working for very complex scenarios. Here is a lot of not only producing grammatically and semantically correct reports, but also reports that actually make sense and take the highlights of the medical industry into a very well concise report. So the first thing is actually verify that actually with the current state of art in terms of medical data, we can provide semantic and grammatically correct reports that actually summarize the input given as a human will do so. So in order to do that, we did a small feasibility prototype that consisted only in just using like mock data that was written by a medical student and actually parsing that through ChatGPT and then asking two different users. One is a normal human being that could read the result and that could interpret that that was correctly written, and also a medical professional that evaluated if the result was correct using the mock data. And actually, we will get back to this in a moment, and we will be able to actually evaluate what was the result of it. So just before actually going through that, let's talk quickly about the link canvas that I mentioned. Here is important, for example, to see and to highlight the unfair advantage that we will have with the product in case that we actually are able to get in partnership with hospitals, because they will provide us the data that is the essential component in machine learning and artificial intelligence to make this happen. And in cost structure, actually, as a software product, there is always an advantage because the software development is very inexpensive and it scales relatively easy. So for example, of course, we will have cost actually querying the ChatGPT engine or any other model that we decide to use. We will need some backend development, some physical marketing, but we can have also different revenue streams that we can offer to our customers, like for example, per use charge or monthly subscription based on usage, or even licensing in case of hospitals. Last but not least, as I mentioned, this is a really good picture to keep in our heads when we are developing in terms of key metrics. So the idea is that we are able to generate in less than a minute a full report, that at least in a good day for a hospital, at least 10 reports are generated per doctor in average, because they actually use a lot of procedures in the hospitals that they can, that reports need to be generated actually. And then the most important one, how many minutes a day are we saving in time? Last but not least, as I mentioned before, let's talk about the product team topologies. So here is a very simplified view of how our team will work. And that depends a lot of what we encounter and how the product evolved in the next 1 or 2 years. Of course, for example, if we decide to integrate with hospital provider system, we will need an API team that provide the right services to them. But also if we decide to pursue the path of mobile and web implementations, we will actually need a team that cares of the GUI and the interaction with the API. And of course, we will need like a team that takes care of the onboarding and the customization for the hospitals and the doctors. And more probably, if we decide to go for interaction directly to the hospitals, we will need a sales team. Here it's important to mention that, of course, these projects include a high complexity in terms of technical capabilities. So we will have, for example, the AI processing team, the data feeder in order to transform unstructured data into structured data. And last but not least, of course, we will need the payment and the subscription services. As we were saying here, coming back to our initial prototype, let's actually talk about a little bit more the result that we expected to have there. And the results there was, of course, building a prototype, test the prototype, and validate the results. So how did we do that? So as I mentioned before, we use a very simple system using ChatGPT and mock data created by a medical student, and these were the results. So the prototype was actually completely feasible. We were able to build it and test it. We also confirmed during the process that we can customize the AI model in case that we get access to medical data, which is really good in terms of tuning the already well-developed capabilities of GPT-3. And last but not least, actually the result received an appreciation of 7 out of 10 by a medical professional, which is outstanding considering that the model hasn't been trained in medical data yet. But after this, we decided to do a second experiment. So what happened when we actually open the possibility to the users to have live data? What happens when we have a great diversity of reports and with a great diversity of probabilities of having very, very different kind of inputs? So here, what we decided to do was also build a live data prototype, but release it to a small set of professionals before actually send it to a huge group. So we decided to actually have 3 different doctors evaluating and providing different real life data with the prototype. For that, actually, we built a small prototype that is live in software that actually allows you to fill a form with the different, like copy paste the information that you probably already have in the system and actually provide an assessment in 2 different languages, German and English. And then actually it is a qualification by a medical professional with 3 different use cases scenario, of course, provided by them. But 100% of the medical professional invited to the test qualified the value and the willingness to use as 5 out of 5 in case the prototype will work effectively. So actually, this tells us that the next step to do is actually get our hands into data, into partnerships in order to develop a model that actually is trained to make specifically this kind of process, given that without the data, the model really don't know what to highlight and what is important to include in the summaries, medically speaking. And last but not least, let me actually summarize the principles we used through the whole process of building this.
So I'm just going to pause you on that. I want to make sure I give you lots of feedback. I think it's super valuable.
Yes, definitely.
Although I love the principles, and they're great. We'll keep them up here because I think they will come up. Awesome. So I'll go through just quick points on the case study, and then we'll slow down and talk about sort of like general observations from the 8 weeks. Generally excellent. A really strong case study. If you try and follow along the slides if you can. If you just go back to the overview, yes. The first one. Yeah, nothing to criticize. I thought overview was crystal clear at the beginning. Your introduction of the problem, again, very clear. So important, right? Because if you don't get it right, so if someone's a bit confused here, you've just lost them for the rest of the presentation. So sounds easy, but actually quite hard to do. You could strengthen this with a little bit of like storytelling, right? A bit of color, I call it. So, you could go, for example, here's this problem I'm thinking about. For example, here's Dr. John, and he spends his days struggling, 14-hour days, and on top of that, he's doing 2 hours a day of writing manual report. Just adds that bit of like human character to it. Can be a nice technique. I think will just help you go up a level. On the first objective, again, very clear, great intro, results were super strong. I think here again, a little bit of storytelling that could be improved would be like, this is exciting, but you said it in a very sort of calm way, which is good. You should be excited at, communicate to people listening to get them excited. But, look, basically we've cracked an acquisition channel. We know where to find these doctors now. And because they're so happy to talk to us, it indicates that this is a really acute problem, right? So there's something exciting here we want to go into. Think about how that would make me as a listener feel, as a stakeholder, as a team member. It makes me really go like, oh, this is I want to really listen in now for the rest of this. Again, yours was very good. This is going to take it up to another level. Your discovery work, clear, again, interesting. I think, so good going through those highlights as well. That's a good example of color storytelling, right? Just really bringing it to life. I thought that was very strong. On objective 2, again, crystal clear. I liked particularly what I call bridging. So it's very clear the logical connection between what you did in objective 1 and why now you're doing this stuff here. It made sense, this connection. On the blue ocean, obviously we've got time constraint today, but generally it's really worth zooming in on the blue ocean, being crystal clear about what is it. What does it help us do? Ultimately see what everyone else is doing in the market and where we can find a gap in the market. And then visually go through, even highlighting things or, hovering your mouse over something just to show, what these points are, where the gap is, etc. Can be really powerful as a tool of communication. And again, just remember that all this stuff is new to people. So really worth going through. Again, today, time constraint, completely fine. Usually you're never going to put in so much stuff in just 15 minutes. One thing, product vision. I thought it was good, but I would put this through ChatGPT or Copy AI just to get some variations. I think I like exactly what it's trying to say. I just think you can make it a bit more concise. And I think particularly when you're a non-native speaker, your English is very good, obviously, but just put it through something like that, just so you can get try and lift it up a level. Roadmap, very clear steps. I love that. Again, you mentioned the importance of KPIs, like i.e. how are we going to actually measure success? I thought that was very strong. Lean canvas, excellent. Why was it excellent? Because you started addressing the big questions that I would have as a stakeholder around, okay, well, like, what's our strategy in terms of market? Like, who are we addressing? Hospitals, strategy, unfair advantage, revenue, big one. You talked about these main things, and you didn't go into detail on the things you didn't really need to, right? Like channels, high level concept, for example. So I thought that was excellent, just the right level of detail. On the prototype, I loved it. Was a lot of people say with the prototype experiment, they'll just sort of like mention it. You were very clear about like, what is this thing? What's it helping us do? And why did I come up with this specific experiment? Excellent. That's when this is powerful. It helps you clarify your own thinking and then communicate your thinking. I love that you iterated on the prototype as well, and kept that small beta group. Good. Slowing down now, just talking about next steps and sort of observations, Alan. So I've got four sort of key takeaways. The first one, keep doing what you're doing. You've thrown yourself into Prod MBA. There's nothing that I can really fault, right? You've shown up to, I think, every workshop. You are very enthusiastic, you're very supportive of other people. I know you've been connecting with other people, like outside of the sort of the organized stuff. Awesome. The prototype, you went away and did quite a tricky thing, which is testing with real people plus committing to actually building it. So keep doing what you're doing. Just throw yourself into it. Keep experimenting, learning, and you're completely on the right path with that, right? So just keep doing what you're doing. Second thing, one thing to keep improving on specifically is that mindset. I've seen a big shift in you from week 1, but you're going to have to just keep vigilant, right? Keep reminding yourself problems, opportunities, stay open, don't jump to solutions and technical questions too early. So, I'm seeing a shift there. Just really try and keep that in mind. How to do that? Come back to the frameworks. Come back to our Miro board. It's going to be the best way to help you have a bit of discipline there. The third thing, leadership is something I don't see you in practice, right? Sorry, in the real world with your teams. I suspect that you're going to get, if not already, very good at a leader. Your communication is excellent. Communication skills are excellent. And I think you'll get very strong at this by just getting better, more confident with all of these sort of frameworks and tools, etc. I think because you've got communication, add to that then a really nice set of frameworks and principles, and you've got all the ingredients to become an excellent leader. And fourth thing, keep building out this product. It's feasible and it's clearly valuable. And I think there's something here, whether it's a side project or whether it becomes a business, I'm not sure, but you're just going to learn a lot by continuing to iterate on this. Any sort of final thoughts from yourself, or anything that you feel you want to focus on moving forward?
Well, first, thank you very much for all the learnings. It definitely was really intense 2 months, but really life-changing 2 months, I would say. I learned a lot, and looking back is really astonishing, the amount of work that every member actually put through, and what you came up with actually building the prototype, not just out of the blue, but with the whole reasoning behind it. I think is really, really nice. Definitely, I appreciate a lot, all the feedback. Actually, regarding the keep building the project, definitely is still ongoing. And now there are multiple paths actually being open that are worth exploring. Maybe getting funding to actually invest into these partnerships, and actually looking for someone that provides the data, or pivoting into the psychology world. That is, they have very similar problems in a not so much regulated environment. So this could be also something that discovery is probably on the list of things to do there.
Well, look, what I'm going to do as the next step, because on that, why don't we just do a next few months, weekly check-in? Just message me on Slack with what are you working on, what are the challenges you're facing, and I'm super happy to help you. It's exciting seeing what you're going to do with this, and I'm always happy to help people build out a business. So let's do that as a next step, and then we can stay a bit, quite closely in touch on this. I'm gonna have to.
Definitely.
I pop off. I'm sorry. I wish we had more. It's 10 minutes more, but I've got another call that I'm already a bit late for. But no, honestly, again, it was awesome having you on the cohort. Always bringing good energy to it. It's again really inspiring to see you go and put work in. So I think now just keep doing what you're doing, and let's stay in touch over Slack on this. Then we can do a weekly check-in.
Okay.
And, happy to offer my thoughts there as well.
Definitely, I really appreciate it. Maybe also to invite you with more details to this other course that I'm going to be important in summer. So yeah, let's definitely keep it in touch.
Awesome. Well, look, have a good weekend. Enjoy the rest as well. I know you put a lot of work in, so do take some time off, relax, and we'll definitely stay in touch over Slack on this.
Okay, thank you so much for everything, Henry. Have a good weekend. I don't delay you anymore. Talk to you next week. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.